Originally conceived as an MSX game by YM Katz in 1984, the Demon Crystal was remade in 2019 for PCs and today's subject matter, Nintendo Switch. And when I say remade, I meant to say they just took the old game, added a splash of color to it, and made some improvements to make it more palatable to modern tastes. The resulting product is something that is more playable than its original incarnation, but not to the degree that it's a totally new experience. Then again, this is based on an old MSX game that never saw the light of day on any of the more worldwidely popular consoles that everyone else would have played, so this would be a new experience for most. Full disclosure, I did eventually go back and play the original Demon Crystal game on MSX via the evil art of emulation. And let's just say that if you have an inkling to sample this here game, just stick with the modern version. It is infinitely more tolerable compared to its original, and that's as far as I'll go. The story of what is described as an action RPG game is that you are the hero, whose name I don't recall, and you have to save Princess Chris and the land of fairies from evil demons and stuff. You do this by invading houses full of monsters and killing said monsters with bombs and unlocking doors with keys in an effort to find the magic key that will unveil a magic door that will warp you to the next house, and you do this about 30 times before the game is done. Bombs are your only weapons against the demons, and naturally you have a finite amount, but you can collect more either scattered throughout the level or occasionally dropped by the demons you slay. Time your shots and you could possibly knock out multiple foes who come into contact with the resultant flame, but don't rush in because the flame can also kill you, and one hit is all it takes to lose a life. You also lose a life if time runs out, which means having to replay the level over again, and losing all your lives means your game comes to an end. Fortunately, the Demon Crystal allows you to retry any of the houses you cleared, so there are no worries about having to replay the whole game from scratch unless you really want to. Revisiting houses also allows you to try and collect treasures you've missed out on the first time. Some houses yield treasures that will enhance your abilities, from fire-resistant armor to time-slowing hourglasses, and other trinkets that will let you slay beasts your bombs normally couldn't. Some treasures can be found stashed away, while others only appear after you appease a condition laid out by this cute little fairy thing here. Alas, some treasures are cursed and can actually take away your goodies rather than grant you more, so there is an element of risk, but never to the degree where it comes out of nowhere. Simply put, if a fairy appears on screen, there's a treasure in the house, and the words usually detail what to expect or what to do. The Demon Crystal is a very simplistic game with a very simplistic premise that shouldn't be too difficult to figure out. Controls are simple enough. The D-pad moves the hero, A button chucks the bomb, and that's it. The Y, X, and Start buttons pauses the action to bring up stats, inventory, and options respectively, but the game's simple controls work well enough for the game at hand. Now when you load the game for the first time, you're treated to a tutorial that teaches you the game mechanics, and it's useful for learning the nuances and stuff. Only pops up when you play a new game, so setting that aside, it's much like a lot of the old school games where you have a straightforward premise that is well executed and controls fine. That said, just because the Demon Crystal is a simple game doesn't make it an easy romp. There's only 30 levels in the game, but some of them tend to pose a challenge, and it basically boils down to learning how things work, how enemies behave, how your own character moves about, and also knowing which rooms contain what. Because locked chambers are shrouded in darkness and only reveal themselves when a door is open, wherein you'll find anything from keys, to bombs, to more bad guys waiting in ambush. So it becomes a game of memorization and seeing which rooms has the treasures you want. Add to that a rapidly decreasing time limit, the additional conditions of acquiring those special treasures, and making sure to avoid the penalizing fake treasures, and the Demon Crystal proves to be a bit of a challenge to overcome, much like any old game would be. And this is where the modern improvements come in, because you can continue where you left off or replay any of the previous houses you've already cleared. And the stage select screen will even helpfully point out which stages have treasures, and even specifies which treasures if you've snagged one already. Inventory screen keeps track of all the treasures you've discovered. Stats are stats. As far as options are concerned, either volume control or clearing your progress to start fresh, and not much else. The Demon Crystal boasts a pseudo 8-bit inspired graphical style, presumably taking the assets of the older game and touching them up with extra colors and bits, taking it to slightly above NES quality. Whereas the original version were simple, static screens that let you see the whole house, this remade version zooms in on the action to fill the wide screen, and thus there is some scrolling, which is fine, but does keep from giving the player the big picture. I kinda wish there was an option for a 4:3 viewpoint, which would be more old school and also let you see the whole house as originally intended, but whatever, this is fine. No slowdown, no filter, no jank, nothing out of the ordinary. Visually, it looks fine for what it is. Unfortunately, the Demon Crystal only has a couple jingles, one being a short looping track that plays for the majority of the game, and another short looping track that plays when time is running out. Neither track is particularly good, and their constant looping slowly begins to grate after a while. And yes, these are based on the original tracks from the original version, and yes, they were also bad in the original format. Sound effects are kind of odd because they're a mix of 8-bit sounding and not so 8-bit sounding sounds, and it sounds odd. So, I don't know, that's all I got. Overall, the Demon Crystal is not that bad of a game. Not bad at all. It's a nice way of taking a relatively obscure old game from a computer format that isn't widely adopted and turning it into something digestible for the modern audience while still retaining the core concept and gameplay of its original version. That's something to be appreciated, and it also helps the game being fun to play as well. The $10 price tag might be a bit steep for a relatively simplistic game, at least for some people, but definitely one worth checking out if you could get it during a sale, which does happen every once in a while.